let's give a warm welcome, even though it's a virtual applaud, if you want, and give a warm welcome on the side of the chat to Irina. Irina, she's actually Russian. Like most of you, she studies in her BA degree on Asia-Pacific studies, and her focus is more on international relations. So later on, maybe you guys will be interested in her working experience in Asia-Pacific. Now she resides in Taiwan, and she has multiple experiences working in different fields as English teacher, dancer, also environmental educator. And most importantly, why I invited her today is because I get in contact with Extinction rebellions in Taiwan, and asked them if you don't mind recommending somebody who's in the expertise of organizing your events as an NGO, sort of hardcore promoting environmental consciousness. I'll be very happy to have somebody to give a guest lecture on this subject. After all, our course is mostly about sustainable development, but this guest lecture, why I put it at the end of the semester, is also to help you guys to learn a little bit about professional development in the future when you graduated from your BA degree. And if you want to later on ask Irina about her experience working in Taiwan, how she finds a job, how she survives, and then does she like Taiwan in general? And because like you guys, some of you come not even from UK, you're from Europe or across the world. Maybe in the future you want to work in Asia Pacific, specifically focus on environmental issues. I'll be most pleased. Okay. And without further ado, for Irina, she will be talking about, because she's an event organizer at Extinction Rebellion in Taiwan. So she has quite a lot of experience to talk about this. And I would like to welcome her for our talk today. Irina.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the introduction. I'm really happy to be here, and it's my first talk online, so it's a very interesting experience. So I'll start first of all to introduce a little bit myself, and if you don't mind, yeah, sure. You're muted.
Sorry, Irina. I think your screen share, you need to pull out your PowerPoint. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Now you're muted.
Okay. Okay, is it working now? Yes. Now you're muted. Is it working now? Okay.
Yes, it's working now.
Okay, cool. So I gave a title of my talk is Where's Taiwan in the Path of Sustainability? Because I was asked to, relate Taiwan to the sustainability concepts of what is now, advocating as also part of the environmental consciousness, environment awareness. So first, I'll jump to myself, as I was also asked to talk a little bit myself as well. So basically, okay, cool. So I gave a title of my talk is Where's Taiwan in the Path of Sustainability? Because I was asked to, relate Taiwan to the sustainability concepts of what is now, advocating as also part of the environmental consciousness, environment awareness. So first, I'll jump to myself, as I was also asked to talk a little bit myself as well. So basically, I'm human, and I was born in the universe that we know, and I was born on Earth, Siberia. So right there in the center is my city, like in the middle of middle of Russia. And my actually childhood and winters were like this. So we were going outside and training our body to be resistant to cold and playing in snow in winters and so on. And I was raised in a town which is full of universities, but it's really a town. So, but we have a lot of academia. And my summers were spent actually on a countryside house where we had a field to grow things for our winter, pickled containers, and then consume them during the winter, as Siberia is really not suitable for growing like fruit, only the berries and some vegetables. And since I was a child, I was spending a lot of time, especially the summertime, because we were growing food in the summer. We were kind of like semi-farmers. And I was spending a lot of time there, like exploring the forest and learning from my grandmother how to grow vegetables and how to, cross species them, like just like a kind of like Frankenstein grandmother. And she was teaching me this kind of stuff and experimenting with how we could harvest things better, because in Siberia it's basically it's not the summer's so short and it's really hard to do to grow things. So I define my occupation as now like transitioning from ecocentrism to ecocentrism. So, and I'll be just mentioning one of the projects that I'm trying to start off, and I gave it the name of Arthetics. It's a system of Earth and how we relate to that, and how we can move from basically living in our ecocentric words, views to ecocentric, to be how more to have a better ecological awareness and ecological lifestyle. So, and the methodology that I use throughout my life is the scientific thinking, but not just the scientific thinking for the betterment or progress or technological progress for humans, but how we can keep up help our earth to sustain our life, because our life depends basically on our earth home, the only home that we have known. So if we talk about like my worldviews, I question everything. Is very that what science does. Even only then you can learn something when you question it. And I do it like in the range or in the framework of ecological awareness, and spend always all my effort for the earth and for the survival of the species of earth. So as I arrived to Taiwan, my Taiwan's last chapter basically started in the university of my hometown, and I studied foreign politics in Asia Pacific region. And then I had spent some time studying just the Chinese language in Taiwan, as there was really, free opportunity, financial opportunity to study Chinese and to improve it in Taiwan. And then I went back to my country to get a bachelor degree in my university. Then I came back to Taiwan and I did another degree in management of technology. But basically, honestly speaking, I didn't use a lot of that. I just learned how to do research, and maybe this kind of skill helped me in life. But as for the rest of the content, it was mostly about the business and how to patent, how to, get the technology to the market, and what is competitive dynamics, what is competition, what is cooperation, how these two can work together. I think it's not where I wanted to go, and I realized that I like education, I like teaching, and I started to simply teach English, teach Taiwanese kids English. And that's how I realized that whatever I studied actually is not related to what I'm doing now. Not that much, maybe some language skills and some little bit of research skills. But the content is like whatever I learned throughout my life after the graduation. That's what matters right now. but you guys studying sustainability, so it's something more relevant. And then I started to design and teach an education program of scientific thinking for kids. As I came across with Taiwanese education. Education in Taiwan is pretty much traditional. There is no much room and time devoted in the curriculum for kids to try out their creativity or to do something which is outside of the box of the traditional system. So basically, it's like mostly memorization and the traditional way of learning. And so I decided to introduce some elements of the education program that would help them to think scientifically, critically, and creatively. So I with my friend, we wrote the first draft for the program that I've been using till now since that time to help kids to build their awareness through their scientific thinking. So they get they make guesses, they then go to the experimentation process, then they do the experimentation and they compare the results with what they were guessing. And I basically do this, and then I became a volunteer for the Venus Project as a local coordinator and as well as a translator, since my Chinese has been improved all the time. So I helped with translations, with coordinating some events and giving talks and for the Venus Project. If you can check out, the Venus Project is a system, a social is a system that is also applying the science for the social concern and environmental concern. The new social design is nothing compared to whatever it was before or any system that we experienced, like communism or capitalism. Is completely different design, social design. So then I started to volunteer at the same time for climate scientists and Earth system projects as like a data collector and contributor, as I learned just myself like how to read the data, and I've been interested in Earth system science like since I was, as I mentioned, since I was like practically doing some freaky things on the countryside with tomatoes and cucumbers. So anyway, so I decided like just to dive deeper because of the also growing awareness in my mind about like the ecological state of the world that we are now in. And I just dive into like the depths of earth sciences, and we're offering my help to some climate scientists. Were really welcome and participate in some voluntary projects. Mostly it was online, but the data collection and contribution to the data to the projects. And then I started to build my own material for like just giving talks around in Taiwan, but mostly in the capital, because like more people are kind of like have bigger and greater awareness of the ecological state of the world in the capital. It's like maybe it's normal for all the capitals in the world. And I was just renting space. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt for a little bit. Asta, one of my students, she asked, is Venus Project established by Jack Fresco?
Yes. Yeah. It was founded by Jack Fresco, and now Jack Fresco passed away, and Roxanne Majors is the one who's running the project in Venus, Florida. Exactly.
Asta, you have more knowledge than me. I have not heard of Venus Project until like Irina explained it to me. She said amazing.
That's right. And yeah, is it? Sorry, is that? I can't see her. Okay, it's fine. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So, and then I, like a couple of years ago, started to volunteer for Extinction in Taiwan. It was interesting that me and another person from also not even Taiwanese, from Switzerland, we met online. We started to think something like to organize events in Taiwan as the Extinction Rebellion became, more and more popular all over the world. And we were foreigners in Taiwan, and it's very foreign to their, culture here. And so at the same time, there was a girl, Jennifer, and she actually gathered also other foreigners, but they gathered like in a cafe. And at the same time, we started to know each other, and we realized that we actually started the movement at the same time. And then they were starting doing an events, and I joined them as a rebel and helped them with events. And the first one was like a choreographed dance for Earth, we called Earth Dance. And now I'm putting more focus for aesthetic education projects that I mentioned, and write articles. And I also collaborate with one of my friends, and writing a book, the book that we edited already, and now I'm focusing on creating the material for educating the public, and progressing in the direction of how we can function an ecosystem by breaking up with our ecosystem. That's what basically what this project is about, is changing the value system and how we see the earth, not like an extraction, a ball of extraction for us to extract the resources, but how we need to imagine this as a home for us and other species as well that we share this earth with. So I will introduce some from my quotes, how I see the world. I think that whatever we see in the earth is our image, and we should be responsible for that. It's because we should be responsible for our behavior in this ecosystem, which is borderless. And if there is a typhoon or even a pandemic, it's like there are no borders for pandemics and no borders for typhoons or hurricanes. And I also relate myself as that, like as we are sustaining our life together with our species. So, and we need to change our value system if we want really to continue our survival of our species. Our species depends on the survival of other species. And our value system is pretty much concentrated on, getting richer, and we sometimes don't even ask like what's wrong with that. Like we just climb on each other's shoulders and getting richer for some in expense of somebody else. And I just hope that people ask the question, maybe there was something wrong with the value system, or the other generations, next generation would ask this question, like what was wrong with the system of my parents or the system of my grandparents? Definitely something wrong. So, and basically it's not a surprise because our systems are shaped by the monetary system. We have the system of profit, ownership, and competition, and environmental ignorance at the same time. So that's how we understand the world. And but this is not in accordance with the carrying capacity of the planet. From the perspective of big picture, we need to see the complexity of the world, and it's far beyond our national ecos or individual ecos or our tribal thinking, and we need to get together to solve problems, because problems are global. So as mentioned, they have no borders, as we have a global civilization right now. Or we do that, or we just perish individually. And I do the best to battle for Earth, and that's what the slogan of my life. Whatever I can do for the Earth, so I will be continuing doing that. Okay, so let's get to some information about Taiwan. So where is Taiwan on the path of sustainability? So if you take a look at Taiwan's background in the current existential crisis, we can see that Taiwan's temperatures have been rapidly increasing, and they have been increasing actually way higher, way faster than the global temperatures. So in the past 100 years, and the temperatures in Taiwan have been increasing at average 1.3 Celsius degrees or 1.3 from some sources, and even some places have been have been witnessing the increase of temperatures even up to 2 degrees Celsius. And so it depends on the places that we are talking about. Like Taipei, it's basically in the basin, and it also has a lot of accumulation of the heat. So Taipei has a great increase of the temperature rather than other places. And here is just the trend from Taipei and Tainan, how temperatures in Taiwan have been increasing. So why Taiwan is vulnerable to the temperature increase and in general to the climate change? It's very vulnerable. It was ranked among the country most vulnerable to extreme weather threats in the world, and it's also due to one of those reasons is because Taiwan is an island. And how we can see that despite their hurricanes, their typhoons, that's called hurricanes in the Asia Pacific region, they are also droughts. And so what is interesting is that despite record-breaking rainfalls, which is Taiwan actually is having 3 times more rainfall, which is like 2,500 milliliters of every year, which is like 3 times bigger than the global average. But despite that, Taiwan is classified as a scarce, water scarce country. And it's because despite this kind of 3 times average than global rainfall, Taiwan's water use in Taiwan is only like 20 to 22%. And it's due to their water distribution and due to the landscape of Taiwan, and lots of water just ends up in the ocean. Lots of water from the river ends up in the ocean. There is a lot of mountains, and there's also plays a huge role of why there is such lots of rainfall, but Taiwan is still classified as a water scarce country. And you can see there are like also intensified droughts and also on the rice fields and like general, especially recently 30 years, during the 30 years Taiwan experienced droughts in the south of Taiwan more rapidly than in the north of Taiwan. And it's also very susceptible to sensitive to sea level rise and intensified typhoons. Though this year was very interesting that we didn't have typhoon for like it was the first year after 62 years, as far as I remember, without a typhoon. It's also due to the shifting models of typhoon patterns due to their warming Arctic. So other vulnerabilities include like Aboriginal communities. So Aboriginal communities, indigenous people who live mostly in the mountains, and if there is a huge typhoon like a Typhoon Morakot in 2009, so there is a huge risk of landslides. Because of the rain and the strength of the wind. So there is a huge risk of landslides, and there were many homes, for example, destroyed 11 years ago during the Morakot typhoons. And so Aboriginal communities are also vulnerable because they are low-income families. Basically, they are classified, most of them, as low-income families. And so another vulnerabilities is Taiwan's forests. If the temperature is going to rise as far as they're rising right now. So by 2080, the number of Taiwan fir and hemlock will decrease by 58 to 90%, which is like is really unimaginable for the forest that Taiwan has so far. It's a huge heritage that Taiwan is proud of. And also, like when we have a sea level rise, it penetrates to snow and is penetrating to the soil, and there is soil salination. There's also a problem to grow food like this. And as I mentioned, like droughts in the south and warm oceans and changing typhoon seasons, and that disrupts the hatching season for lots of fish, especially for salmon. If we jump to participation and perception by the public, like how public in Taiwan perceived and participates in the climate change issues. There's some special moments about Taiwanese culture that is also, as well as the Chinese culture, they're very similar. That is kind of like penetrating and making up this different features of public Taiwanese perceptions of this issue. So you can see this was the photo from their last year's climate march that was held in September, in the end of September, I believe. And there are lots of young people, and mostly young people participate, but still the percentage of participants is quite low compared to other countries. If we don't compare Taiwan to other Asia Pacific countries, but we compare Taiwan to European countries. So young people, as one journalist described, and young people, they have a high perception, they have knowledge about the issue, but they have really low action, which is really interesting. So if we exclude kindergartens, elementary schools from the number of students in Taiwan, like we just take the number 2.5 million students, and no kindergarten, elementary school, there, we could consider that maybe in other European countries, because this kind of category of young students also participate in climate strikes in European countries, but in Taiwan is quite different. So if we take this number, is less than 0.2% have ever participated in a climate strike. So you can see that this kind of, if you say Fridays for Future or Extinction Rebellion, this kind of movements are quite foreign to Taiwan, and they're not so popular. So what is this due to? So some experts, they evaluating this as due to also Confucius culture. So if you ever heard about the Confucius culture, is that simply speaking, the Confucius culture implies that there is the emperor, then there is a ministry, then there is the father, and there is the son. So this is a Confucius culture hierarchy. So when those in power, they're performing some duties, and other people just standing by, and they just complete their own task, and they're waiting for those in power to take decisions for them. And they just choose wait and see. So partially it may be due to the Confucius culture. And then next one is could be, sorry, someone is asking. Sorry, it's like someone is asking a question.
Not sure. Just a second. Let me see. Probably somebody didn't unmute themselves. Damien, is that you? Because you are not muted. Some background noises. Yep. Now we don't hear it anymore. I don't know about you. Can you hear?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I can't hear anyone.
Okay. Anybody want to ask questions? Is it because of that? So somebody turn on their microphone. No, I don't think anybody say something. If you have any question, don't be afraid. You can either jump in, raise your hand, or type on the meeting chat as usual. Not because Irina is giving the lecture and then she will tell you off. Okay?
Yeah,
right.
thanks. So yeah.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
All right. So another factor based on research and basically it's my own also observations, and we are trying to understand how the public here also perceive these kind of issues is like young people here studying really hard, like the culture of you need to study hard, so therefore if you study hard you enter a good school, if you enter a good school you find a good job and you achieve a happy life, therefore so they are more important tasks than perception or participation, the climate change issues and extinction, existential crisis such as like the extinction, the rapid extinction rate of our species, of the species that we depend on. So especially when people don't feel they are really right away issues, right? Like we're humans, like pretty much short-sighted, so we just like thinking on the tomorrow. So it's not happening at outdoor in our yard, it's not in my backyard. So, and that's what is more important for specifically for the Taiwanese audience. And also is the climate change is advertised is not maybe a correct word, but is associated in the heads of many as love the earth actions, or even saving polar bears, the places that really far away from Taiwan are really unknown. So there's some also issues with that, how people associate this kind of like climate change, like love the earth, recycle, always like the issue of the middle class that who have time and leisure and money to afford to think about that or to do something about that. And also it's due to the Taiwan's international status, because Taiwan is not a country, right? It's not considered a country, I mean, officially. So due to their relationship with China, and that's why if there's some like United Nations framework agreement on climate change, or like that you sign, the agreements that you sign, so since Taiwan is not considered as a country, so it doesn't have to make any carbon reduction commitments, and also it's due to China's an economic threat. There is a lot of like not really fair trade between Taiwan and China, and there have been lots of strikes about that, and people put that the non-fairness, unfair trade as a priority above like any even environmental issues. Especially there were like years ago there was a huge strike in Taipei. So at that time, like China's the unfair trade with China was like just on almost everyone's head. And also its lack of identifying themselves with global actions. Also, it's because of lack of international recognitions and probably even personally, right? Like if I don't identify myself with a global community, then I really am not myself individually. I'm not going to reduce my carbon footprint, like even individually. And climate change also goes in combination with air pollution problem. And this is perceived as a really like a bigger threat than any climate issues or climate related issues. Because air pollution has been really for a long time an issue for a long time in Taiwan. And so some people even fail to see the link between the climate change and air pollution. Like if you decrease the air pollution, we also can, decrease the amount of climate change. I mean, in terms of like consuming the carbon footprint. So despite 85% of the people personally felt the impact of climate change, the person really felt the impact of climate change through perhaps like heated summers, or the disruption of like weather cycles, like for example now for farmers especially sensitive, because farmers need to change their farming time to the later autumn because of the typhoon. And if also it's disrupted, if there are strong and more intensive typhoons, they're disrupting also the farming cycle, they just destroying the harvest. And even through the heat, personally, like 80% of people can already feel that it's getting hotter and hotter, and the autumn and fall is arriving later, and the spring is arriving later. But despite the fact that 85% of people personally feel the impact of climate change in Taiwan, only around like 50% believe that enhancing Taiwan's economic growth should be the current priority. So the rest is that then they put around 40%, okay, we can reduce the prevalence of infection diseases, so it's the second priority. And then like the third priority is around 40%, 38%, 39%. It's like all for accelerating the promotion of carbon reduction and energy transformation. So it's not on the first priority list of public perception of these issues. So this is also very similar to the improving social equality between the rich and the poor. So improving social equality between the rich and the poor and energy transformation is somewhat similar in the percentage of people that they would think this is a priority, but it's not the first priority. The first priority still is like the economic growth. Our country needs to have the economic growth, which is like around 50% of population. So I just mentioned here because so if you Extinction Rebellion rebel, you're talking about like degrowth policies or anything like more ecological, like against economic growth, then you will be perceived like by Taiwanese public more likely will be perceived that how can you talk about that, like our country needs economic growth. So it's really hard to break through the minds of people that we cannot grow any further anymore. So participation and perception by the public. The last point is that, as a conclusion, is that public they still believe that investing in guiding industrial operating and reducing environmental pollution and investing in social welfare subsidies. So it's kind of half and half, right? So subsidies for low-income households and so on. So those are similar priorities, though the economic growth, are both these two priorities. And if they pay the taxes, right, so by the surveys and by the interviews, so the data was found out that if they pay the taxes, they believe that the taxes must, go to carbon tax or energy tax, and that should be given back. So yeah, so that's how it is regarding the perception. So how does Taiwan act from their point of view of their general picture? Not so well. So if you can see, I have a little bit late data, but in 2011, which is like 9 years ago, Taiwan was ranked as the 21st place in the world by Taiwan's per capita carbon dioxide emissions, which is for a small country such as Taiwan is quite a lot. And in 2019, Taiwan's climate change performance index, which is evaluating the country's performance towards the action to reduce carbon dioxide emissions as a whole country, Taiwan ranked third to last in response. So it was like third, not the worst, but third to the worst. So, and it was in 2019. It was fortunately the worst ranking that Taiwan has ever got. So as from Taiwan's government, actually there were some attempts, and since the 1990s, and since that time also there were lots of climate research and intensely starting in Taiwan. And since that time, Taiwan is pretty based, like science-based government, has science-based government. I think the modern pandemic of COVID-19 has witnesses a lot. So if there are some scientific findings and they have been reported to the government, most of the times Taiwan's government is willing to listen to scientists. It's perhaps, like in Taiwan, there is no issue for the government to listen to scientists. But there is the issue with the industrial complex, which is Taiwan's economy depending on. So I'm going to a little bit quickly take a look at this and introduce that. So there have been some policies and plans for climate change. As you can see, there are some like transformation, energy transformation plans, industrial transformation plans, carbon emissions, some acts, some laws, gas reduction and management acts. There have been some proposals like this. But the issue is that the government cannot just interrupt and, start to prevent the expansion of related industries, and especially the most polluting industries, is because Taiwan produces lots of things, and it has the huge industrial complex for the international demand of production, especially petrochemicals, chemicals consuming a lot of, and they're polluting. They're the most polluting one, which is the industrial complex in Taiwan, the most polluting one, not their citizens polluting. Citizens only like 12%. So the government doesn't really stop or doesn't really tax, like really radically increasing this tax on those polluting industries. And the transformation dilemma is that low water, electricity, and oil prices for all. So in Taiwan, if you compare Taiwan's electricity bill, is the third lowest in the country, but Taiwan's income is far away not from the third lowest in the country. So there is some disbalances really for the electricity prices. And that, of course, allowing industry to expand more and more because they are not paying for the electricity. They are not paying high prices for the electricity. So, and the water bill is 3 times greater in Taiwan. In European Union, the water bill at average is 3 times greater than in Taiwan. Even in Russia, in the country which has much more water resources, they pay around 2.5, specifically for my city in Siberia, they're paying 2.5 times more for the water than Taiwan. And we remember that Taiwan is classified as a water scarce country. So as for how does Taiwan act from the academia, there have been scientists that continuously, talking about their climate emergency, and the latest petition that they signed was 2020, last year, just in April. And they also sent it off as an international petition of climate emergency. So as citizens, this is also the pictures from the latest climate strike in September last year. And despite the continuous rain, more than 1,000 people joined the global climate action. I'm emphasizing despite the continuous rain because weather really affects Taiwan people's participation in new events. So just emphasize that. And basically, the participants, we also were there. We were proposing 6 demands of climate reform, which is related to reduction of carbon dioxide emissions and energy transformation. Specifically for our movement, we did an Earth action, which was the biggest action by the attraction of other people and also by the number of participants. As you can see, we were performing with a dance, starting with a dance on the busiest streets of Taipei, is in Ximen. There's like a shopping street where lots of people there, and we were kind of like we had to apply for the permission from the police, because that's how in Taiwan works. We are foreigners. We cannot, if we do something like this, it will be considered illegal, and it will maybe put us outside Taiwan as well. So we'll give some inconveniences without visa. So, and we just were performing a dance, and we were standing with a signs, no food, no future, and other related signs and slogans about Extinction Rebellion. And then we gave a poem in Chinese. There's the person, Mark, our member, who wrote a poem in Chinese, and we were telling that poem about how we depend on Earth and calling for the emergency that our planet is facing, our species specifically is facing. So we gave the poem, we read the poem, and then we were, shouting out the slogans about the climate emergency. And then we were doing the die-off. So the die-off, when you lie down on the ground for, I believe, 2 minutes, around that, and you're pretending that really you experience right now the death of the Earth and the death of species. So yeah, and we also do ocean cleanups, and we find for the local people, they are more attractive, seem to be more attractive. And people just join our events, and we go ahead, we clean up the ocean beaches or the forest trails. And we also did some sperm dances. So we would go on the street and we would invite people to dance together with us, and we will put also slogans somewhere on the ground, and as many people as we could have, and most of us are foreigners, so participating in the Extinction Rebellion, organizing events. And the latest event was in Taichung, the city where I stay. We were collaborating and teaming up with Taiwan Clean Air. So they were demanding Taiwanese government to, specifically, I was giving a speech to, proposing the demand to the Taiwanese central government to declare climate emergency at the central level. But on this event, we already were declaring a climate emergency for one city, which is Changhua. It's the city to the south of the city where I stay in Taichung, central Taiwan. And the mayor came to the event, and he was declaring the climate emergency of that city, specifically that city, which has been suffering also from air pollution and the highest death rate and the highest rate of sickness from the air pollution. So I just would like to finish with a quote that despite that we know that we are really advanced, and we know that we are really advanced, and we gathered lots of knowledge, but we don't apply our knowledge to solve the existential crisis we are facing. And that's how I personally separate knowledge and intelligence and wisdom. So all how to separate knowledge, just knowing things, and intelligence when you apply things that you know. But I think that we are not the first generation to know we are destroying the planet. And that gives a hope that we are perhaps the last generation that can do anything about it. And on that, I'm finishing, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Hi, Irina. Yeah. So thank you for your sharing. There are quite a lot of things that I actually, as a person who studied in academic and then trying to research different things about environmental policy, environmental developments, or some environmental issues in Taiwan, I was not even aware that some of the, for example, the statistics that you share about how people are active or inactive in relation to these issues, as they are very, very interesting, actually. Can I open the floor to my students? Because I certainly have a lot of questions for you, but this is a guest talk from for my students. So I would like to welcome my student first, if they have anything they want to ask. I know that you guys are often shy, but in general, you can ask her about her experience working as a volunteer in the NGO in Taiwan, or if you want to ask her, so how do you end up, basically she have told you guys about her experience, how she traveled to Taiwan in relation to her studies and everything. But if you have any questions about this, because it's after all about your professional career development in the future, you're more than welcome to ask. Fire away. Any questions? You can raise your hand or post it on the meeting chat, and I can relay your questions as well. No? You sure? Esther wants to ask Irina, how can we take part in Venus Project? How did you ended up taking part in Venus Project?
Okay, yeah, sure. Like everyone can take part in the Venus Project. We are all the time looking for volunteers, either to help with translations. But first of all, like we invite people to learn about it because it's a really new system of social design. So you need to kind of like a little bit train yourself in scientific thinking, how scientists think, to understand some certain things. But I think it's a great journey of learning of how science can help their betterment of environment and how it can be applied with a human concern. So if you get to the website of www.thevenusproject.com, you go actually directly to the Venus Project. There is the Venus Project official website. And you can learn more about the Venus Project through the website, or there is like a YouTube channel of Venus Project where there are lots of documentaries and some educational videos that one can watch. So yeah, basically that's how you can start off.
Wait, I would like to follow up on that one, actually. For the Venus Project, you said that it's a scientific way to learn about like environment and then developing sort of scientific skills.
It's a social design that applies their science for the human concern and the environment concern. So now we have, the system that is based on the ownership and profit. Basically, what how we use the system is like to profit, right? For mostly for the top or for the governments or for the countries. So there's no new social design. Like if you look at the Earth, you don't see borders, right? So you see what you see is like you see the physical reality. So if you look at our country map, you see borders, right? So like all the artificial boundaries like this. So if you want really to solve global problems, you need to relate to global problems as a global species. So if you continue to separate countries and you continue to share, you continue to own resources, as one country is invading another country because they run off the resources, all these kind of like wars will be perpetuating for resources. But if you educate the public that actually there is scientific thinking as the physical reality of things, it's not artificially like because we are tribes and we started to separate each other. We actually all is the same species and we share the same resources. And resources belong to the earth. They don't belong to someone.
Yeah.
So basically, it's the idea of how we relate to ourselves to the physical reality, but it takes time to change because our mentality has been since we were children, right? We were taught we belong to this country. Since we were children, we were taught we belong to there, to here, but we never actually thought like where do we belong as a species. So it's another approach through like the scientific thinking, first to think, to imagine, and then learn about this and how we apply. So if we apply some technology, then it should be light and built with a minimum environmental expense. And it needs to be efficient in terms of like, the resource extraction, not like we first build lots of things and then we throw it away. And why we throw it away? Because we have to sell things. If we don't sell things, our system collapses. So as long as you have cells, as long as you have money, as long as you have money in power, our system will all the time extract the resources to continue to sustain itself. But the Venus Project is proposing another system, not based on all the time, building things, buying things, and planned obsolescence. I buy things and it gets broke down in design because I want you to buy another thing. So it's a planned obsolescence. So it's the extraction and really waste of resources as our planetary resources and resources as a species.
Okay, so that's why, like at the beginning of the talk, you define yourself like you said that where I come from Earth. I'm a human race, and then you didn't try to like geographically pinpoint down like where you are actually from about being a Russian heritage and everything.
Yeah, I'm affected also by the new values, and I think it's easier to identify myself with those values because I don't need to fight for my country, right? Why would I need to fight for my country when it's this an artificial border on the physical reality of the planet?
Okay, interesting sort of scope to talk about this. When did you first, following up a little bit about how Esther probably want to know about this, is when did you sign up for volunteer and how did they take you, for example? Like, is there somebody who's in contact with you and say, can you help us on this project, for example, translations or something like this? Or
Yes. There are different projects you can join as like if you choose a project to join or join our team, which is like global support team. And there lots all the time, lots of work to do for volunteers. Or you can choose, you can join as if you want to be a local coordinator. Like, for example, I'm local coordinator for Taiwan, but you need to get the course, right? All the courses are free because we are volunteers. We have access to educational resources, and this kind of courses will just go through the basics of what the Venus Project is about, and through the basics of this kind of like thinking and social design and tools to learn how we can apply science for the social concern and environmental concern.
okay, cool. Esther, is it something that you are looking for? Can't see her reply. Yes, that's great. Thank you, Esther. Esther. Do I have any other questions in relation to Irina's talk or her experience in Taiwan in general? Any other people? Sorry, I need to bear with them. Sometimes they type.
No, sorry.
Yeah. I'll leave you guys to type, but in the meanwhile, I want to ask some questions in relation to your talk, actually. One thing that I'm really concerned about, like when I was studying in France as a PhD student, I wanted to join not necessarily climate change march in Taiwan, because at that time, Extinction Rebellion doesn't even exist as a group. But in Taiwan, there was a period of time very close to the march against like the ECFA sort of table trade, is about anti-nuclear protests, basically. And now earlier you have mentioned, because of climate change, there are quite a lot of issues that are also tied, especially like Taiwanese people are very concerned for their air pollution problem. And what I want to know is, with extinction rebellions ongoing and also the background as climate change, are these year, when people talking about air pollution, are they still supporting for nuclear reopening, or because in a way, even though nuclear, we can't really count it as renewable energy, but it can be counted as sort of clean energy. It doesn't produce that much of CO2 emission in general. But in your experience in Taiwan, do you think that even though in Taiwan, say 3 or 4 years ago, there are high peak of anti-nuclear power plants, are those voices dying down because there are this new wave about climate change trying to reduce carbon footprint?
Yeah. So in Taiwan, based on the recent data, right? Like we have 10% of energy comes from nuclear, around 10% or 11%. And an interesting thing that how Taiwanese perceived the nuclear. If you ask Taiwanese, I think there was the recent last year, it was a report last year about the perception of public. So they're asking how much energy comes from nuclear, and they will tell you still that it around 40%. So you could see, you just ask people, how much energy comes from nuclear, how much energy comes from coal, and from nuclear just 10%. But in public perception, they would say 40% or 41, 42%. Though it was 2 years, 2018 and 2020. So in 2020, they perceived a little bit less that our energy comes from. So you could see this kind of bias is created by this kind of the sensitivity of the issue towards the nuclear energy, because if you perceive that most of our energy comes from the nuclear, right? So this kind of bias comes from somewhere. You perceive that it's 40%, but in fact it's 10%. So I think that now it's on the decline. Compare this kind of nuclear anti-nuclear issues, they are on the decline. And but there is always politics in that involved. So for example, the Pan Blue, right? Pan Blue would go for nuclear, like the supporters, and they still, just like in the United States, they get paid, and they would also come and participate in the march, in the climate march that we had in last September. I saw many kinds of groups, like for green energy, for renewable energy, right? They would go and they would pick up their slogans, and there were groups with a nuclear, for nuclear energy. So those groups are normally also, we need to consider they're politicized. They also get paid. Either it's renewable energy, it's also paid by the industry that are advocating for renewables, or it's like for nuclear, advocating for nuclear. So from the perspective of physical sciences, as we know, as the planet gets warmer, right, we actually need to look for the consideration of storing safely our nuclear weapons. I mean, they are not weapons, but they can be weapons if they leak. And there are lots of concerns, especially like specifically in the United States, where it has more than 100 sites of nuclear plants, right? And some sites already happen to have leakage. And when nuclear leak, because of the non-ability of cooling down, of cool the systems, because nuclear needs to cool down, and if rivers are too hot to cool down the nuclear stations, then it could be a disaster as well. So we need to look at the estimations of their environmental concerns and consequences from the also building more nuclear plants. So from the environmental concern, as our climate is getting hotter, it's very sensitive, and it's become more and more sensitive. Nuclear sites become more and more sensitive, especially when you don't apply the technology that have thick containers. So if you have thin containers, which is like 1 inch thickness, is not enough to prevent the leakage. But if you have the containers, like as far as I know, Germany and Japan, they have the containers of a dozen inches thickness, then you can safely store your nuclear power, so nuclear waste. So it really needs to be taken from the perspective of environmental concern in the long term. So again, we are short-sighted species. We only think, okay, doesn't nuclear give us tomorrow's energy, but how would you store it? So it's another big environmental concern. So yeah.
Would you say that for example, you participated Venus and you participated Extinction Rebellion. Extinction Rebellion also against nuclear power in general in Taiwan. I mean.
We don't align ourselves. So I always join the projects that we don't align ourselves for or against. But from perspective of science and scientific estimation in the long term, so like what I research, I would say like you need to look at the long term perspective rather than short term perspective, which implies maybe it's not profitable. Okay. But it's short-term perspective. It's profitable, but it's short-term, right? It's not profitable, but it's long-term. So it depends if you want to leave our environment for the next generation and take care right now for the environment, so at least next generation are not going to suffer that much.
Okay, and I have noticed in your CV actually, because you're saying that you're writing a book as well, and I see that recently you published an article on hydrogen power.
Yes. It's you mean biohydrogen. So biohydrogen was when I was when I was doing the research together with engineers of one of the university in Taiwan, because I am not an engineer by background, but they were engineers, and we were trying to give up some marketing insights for commercializing biohydrogen in the University of Central University, which is like chemical engineer department, engineers from there. Yes, it was biohydrogen.
Would you say that it's a kind of a new sort of better adapted sort of options apart from solar energy?
You mean compared to solar energy or what?
Not necessarily comparing to solar energy. I mean, like biohydrogen is actually very new for the moment. Nobody uses it, but we are having science that developing it.
Yeah, but there is a lot of issues with for biohydrogen you need waste, and how much waste in quantity you need for producing an amount of power. So biohydrogen is bio on the waste, on the process of fertilization, just like when fertilization has a chemical process, right? So it gives off heat, so it gives off energy, so you need a lot of waste. And so if you want biohydrogen, then you need to grow the waste for biohydrogen. Again, you need to expand your land. So when you expand your land, you cut off forest. So it's all, I think it shouldn't be the question about what kind of energy is better, but the question is about, do we really need that much energy? How about the consumption of energy, where it goes? Does it go to really to the betterment of ourselves as a species, or is just for profiting again ourselves and continue with our materialistic point of view and world views? Or we can do better as a species, ecologically, as mentally, ecologically. Maybe we can get rid of lots of stuff that really we don't need. We can keep up with a more valuable stuff stuff like relationship, or how we can, do some eco communities, build some eco communities with this kind of thinking. Maybe we need to change this kind of value system rather than focusing, oh, can we produce the same amount of energy but with other sources? No, if we even go renewables, our world is going to deplete faster, because we need to dig the seabed for the extraction of those powerful powerful minerals for renewables. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Has anybody want to follow up on what we said so far? Has any questions so far? No? Really? I used to force them to ask questions. But it's, after all, a guest lecture. I don't want to embarrass them if they don't want to be shamed. I'm kidding. Okay. I have, if they don't have questions, I have one last question, and I think it's a sort of, because I'm a lecturer, I work in academia, I like controversies and then to bring in debates in general. I think one of the questions might be interesting for my student. I don't know if to what extent they agree, but at least this is something that I want to ask, is in Taiwan, as you said, because you join in Extinction rebellions, you see that most of them are driven by foreigners. And then would you say that in Taiwan, not just in Taiwan, but in Asia in general, these sort of climate change movement has to be led? I'm not saying that, oh, Western Europe or American, but it seems to be the leading sort of climate change discourse or movement or global movement are only popular in either the center of Europe, even if in America can go down to like South America. But in general, the global sort of sense is only shared by Western sort of society and developed sort of democracy states. And would you say that in Taiwan, you feel there is a gap between people's perceptions and people's engagement? And is it because of lack of what you say about Confucianism teaching, or people are highly aware of climate change issue? However, they are very inactive because they don't find that the movement engage themselves. It's not their autonomy sort of core for the causes. And then it has to be led by Westerner or foreigner in general. And what do you feel about it?
Yes, this kind of question, our coordinator, basically, who started the movement in Taiwan, Jennifer, she was also interviewed, and there was a question, a similar one, and she made some observation, just like me. We already living in Taiwan for 11 years. Is that you need a Taiwanese, a local Taiwanese, to lead the movement if you really want to have the movement in Taiwan. So, as also for the Venus Project, for example, as nobody is from local people who haven't taken the initiative to lead, to be the coordinator, I would be really gladly giving this kind of, opportunity to the local people, and to take this in their hands, not because I want to give them responsibilities, but because I know that the movement locally should be led by the local person, because it's just culture, it's how it works. And despite I've been living here for some time, I'm still a foreigner in terms of perhaps mindset or some kind of communication techniques or some approaches of doing things. And if there were like a local person who we really would be glad to give the opportunity to the locals to lead the movement, but the movement itself perceived as a foreign movement. And it's another question, another issue, because the movement comes from the West. So people don't right away jump on it. They need time to really observe, and that's what I found, that local people here, as it's normal, they observe first, and then maybe they engage. So the Venus Project, for example, here has been for years until before I joined, and there was just translation going on. But then, if somebody took the movement, so more people started to engage in that. So for the Extinction Rebellion, possibly it just needs time. It takes time for the local awareness from the local perspective of these issues, and then when they feel it, they maybe can start off their own local movements, or they can identify better with this movement and they can take over of it. I don't know if that's answered the question.
Yeah, it's sort of, but I was just thinking, is there any positive sort of reflections on, say, whether as a foreigner, imagine if one of my students in the future, they are going to work in Asia Pacific region, possibly they are going to.
Oh yeah, this is kind of like
in order to connect them.
Okay, so the Asian culture and specific Chinese culture, people join movements, or as we foreigners, okay, let's say if we foreigners, we have a movement, and from my perspective, if I am taking the perspective of complete foreigner, you join the movement, you do a task, you have a task, you have the commitment, and you just do your task, and we can work together as a team to do tasks together. But that's not how movement starts in Asia, and specifically in Taiwan. I can talk for Taiwan. You need first to get people socialized. You need to make friends with them. You need to go to eat together outside. You need to talk outside. You need to chat. You become friends, and after you become friends, you can talk about what kind of commitments and tasks you do for these movements.
Okay, so it's for Taiwanese particular culture, if in the future anybody, well, I'm sort of aware that in my class there are some students, they've been to Taiwan already, and they're very much keen on going to Taiwan again. And if they want to join, the first thing they need to do is make friends, I suppose.
Yeah, you need to get to go out for dinner first. You go out for dinner or for lunch first, especially make friends when eating. That's very important.
That's very important. Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you. Wait, I have asking another. Wait, she said, I have seen many videos of Jack Fresco, and I especially like the ones when he's talking about money and what issues it causes. However, how can we function without monetary system if it would get abolished?
Yeah, it's a good question. How we can function with the monetary system, just like how we functioned before the money, right? So now if we take the money as a tool, it's really hard. It's not easy. Nobody's going to easy to end up the monetary system, because humans, they have been I would say addicted sometimes, even this word, to tools. We are actually primates. We use tools, so we use money as a tool. So now if you take away a tool, you need to give people other tools. And what other tools could be? So you need also to break up with our old systems and our old thinking and where all our old world operates. If our world can operate in the way it can benefit us, and everyone agrees with how the system is run, then yeah, the money is great. That's how it was. Money was great before it created a digital money, and banks overtook their control of all the money. But now we have a technology that we really need to think, do we really need money? Because we have the technology that we can use instead of money, and the technology is a distribution of resources throughout the world without the waste, right? We humans still have the technology that can allow us to distribute the resources without the involvement of money, because money automatically involves an inequality. So if you use money, you evaluate things in monetary terms. But my question would be, how can you evaluate the amount of air? Can you evaluate the whole amount of air on the earth, or the animals? How much does a whale cost? How much do corals cost? How can we evaluate the ecological disaster that we are facing in the monetary terms? How can we do that with money? So I would ask like this kind of question: how would we do if we can do it with money to relate it? But it doesn't seem so, because, for example, killing a whale or coral reefs or acidifying the oceans is not included in our monetary system. If it's not included in our monetary system, the question is money a good tool? So, but it's really hard to imagine the world without money. But if we talk to people about that and ask questions and ask them, can you imagine this? Or can you ask that? Or can you learn more scientific tools rather than more financial tools? Maybe we can suspicious get over this idea, using money as a tool. We can jump to other tools which are more physical referent and have the physical reference to the physical reality of things, such as corals, oceans, mountains, air, that our very survival depends on.
I guess this reflects to the thing that is very interesting in a way. For example, how do we, like now we actually use monetary system to convert people when industry that pollutes, and they said you can buy the green units. Okay, so the more that you are, the more that you purchase, the more that you can produce. But because they quantify and say that, okay, if I pay this amount of tax or green tax, and then it can get transferred to planting trees elsewhere in Norway or somewhere that it doesn't concern me anyway. But how do you quantify whether planting a tree can save you for X amount of pollution? That's exactly what you're talking about. Trying to use the monetary system by quantifying data, by like actually give them a fixed value of it. Sean has a question, actually. He said, not a great question, but how important is it the climate march continue? And do you think they could be enough to influence government and incite a real change? Sean, do you mean that specifically in Taiwan, or do you mean like globally? Wait a second, I need to see his further post. I can't see your further post. Both, I guess. Irina?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah. He said that how important it is that climate marches continue, and do you think they can be enough of them to influence governments and incite a real change, whether it's in Taiwan or globally, because you're working on this domain?
Yeah, so I think that besides the climate march, right, we, of course, getting out in the streets and spreading the message is really important, but it doesn't mean that everyone has to participate or all the time do this kind of things. Like, we can participate partially with our other things that are more really survival related. So can we also spend our time on restoration the environment, right? So some people would restore, if our value system can be related more to the environment, we can prioritize, for example, if the government prioritizes the environment above any other like economic growth, then if the government really had this kind of priority on their agenda, they would create jobs where, for example, people could go and get paid for restoration of the environment instead of jobs, creating more value for banks, or more value for profit for companies, or more value for from the creating for the variety of goods. So as long as the governments don't put these on the agenda, and the agenda must be the priority of restoring the environment that we are lost up, because the environment is completely on the brink of extinction. So as long as it's not the agenda, of course, climate marches should continue, but it doesn't mean that you personally needs to participate in that. You can participate in other projects that are more relevant to the, also the same relevant to the environmental restoration.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. That's very interesting. I think the government should pay people so they do the beach cleaning instead of people keep on doing that by themselves.
Yeah, so it's
So
not
that
on the agenda, unfortunately. That's
you have to do the beach cleaning.
what should be demanded. Yeah, so through demands to the government should be also continuing.
Right. Okay. Do we have any other questions that you want to ask? One more question related to monetary system. Esther, you're on fire today. I really appreciate that. Some people are motivated to work only because they get paid. So what will motivate them to work if monetary system is gone?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So there is a lot of research on that. What really motivates us? There is a talk, if you don't want to read the book, by Steven Pinker.
Can you tell me the name? Say that again.
Steven Pinker.
Steven Pinker. Okay.
It's about intrinsic motivation. I think the title of the talk goes like this: What really motivates us? Or you just type Steven Pinker motivation and it will pop up. So he wrote a book about that, and there are lots of research, not only from him coming up, it's just on the top of my mind, his research, what really motivates us. And he's consulted many companies, and what he's found out that actually what we do for money is not really our motivation. So we can do for money really fast task related. Like, for example, you will do repetitive jobs for money because you know you will get paid and you're just conditioned to do repetitive jobs. And you will do some fast quick task for money. But when the task is engaging your creativity, your abilities to imagine, to create, to really wanting thinking how to do this or that, then actually money is not that important in that task, or not even important at all. So it's very interesting, the discoveries and research about our motivation, and like what really our motivation is, or what really passion. If we were passionate about something, if we're passionate about drawing, you just sit down and you draw. You don't tell your neighbor to pay you for drawing, for sitting down and draw. You just do it because you're passionate about that.
That's very interesting. Asta, I guess this is why the academic people like me or any of our your teacher are often like crazy workers, and we are seen often as work maniac. Workaholic.
Yeah, that's why I volunteer, right?
Yeah.
I volunteer because I just see value in that and in my personal growth. And it also comes because it's beneficial for me. I grow my mind by learning things. It's not like, I volunteer, sacrifice myself for everyone. And yes, of course, it's also a part of passion, but it's also about learning because I create something. So that's where really the passion lies. And people just shouldn't get paid for it, but they should do it because of their heart want to do that and their mind want to do that.
Oh, Irina, I find that is a perfect speech. That's really trying to motivate our students to work.
I also just
No, but I think it's really great. Anybody has any more questions? If not, I'm going to conclude the sessions. Just in case you want to ask her anything that you feel very interesting of what she does at the moment. 5, 4, 3. Oh, any must reads on climate? Would you recommend, Irina?
Sorry.
Any must reads on climate? Would you recommend before we conclude the session? You want to like give us some reading that our student will be interested.
On climate, you mean on climate science or?
Sean, on climate science, on climate change, on climate change.
Okay, climate change. climate change, I think there are lots of documentaries on climate change. If you want to learn more, I don't have the authors on the top of my mind, but I think learning watching some documentaries, and I would recommend a channel of my friend, climate scientist. Is Paul Beckwith. If you want really to understand the climate system, how climate system works, and also how it works right now without the outdated information. So you type Paul Beckwith.
Backwards. Wait, let me just Google him for a
Uh,
second.
because I cannot type in the chat.
Yes.
So he has a YouTube channel of really good educational videos that he goes through the climate change science and through the new papers, just newly published papers, and it's kind of like live. And I think he has almost for sure weekly updates
Just a
and
second,
like
sorry.
tweeted. Yeah.
Is this his name? He's a climate system scientist.
Yes.
Paul Beckwith, Beckwith.
Yes.
So he has Twitter account, YouTube account.
Yeah.
Oh
He's very popular. Yeah. Yes.
Definitely better.
His videos is very acceptable. I mean, even for those who don't know the basics of climate science, because he's a good educator, and the videos are short, like 15 minutes.
Okay, so sort of like a short briefing about different issues.
It's not like he asked me to promote him, but I'm just
on top of your head thinking about
yes.
who you usually consult about the climate.
Yes.
Know how. Good. Thank you. That's very useful. I think I'll definitely have some of the link for my next year's sort of teaching to incorporate it a little bit on this issue. Did you know this guy personally? Like, is it in Taiwan that you met him, or?
No, I know him personally, like online, and also
Right.
we also talked about the science, the climate science, and exchanged some information.
Okay.
The studies and so on. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we're going to conclude our sessions for today. And thank you all for those of you who stayed up till like the very last minute. I'm trying to end the session a little bit earlier because we didn't have breaks, and I'm sure that you would all need a lot of break. And for Irina, thank you so much for sharing this with us. I really appreciate it. And I think I have very little sort of access to Extinction rebellions in England. I participated a little bit, but because of COVID, can't do anything in Taiwan. I guess with more relaxed sort of regulations, you guys are still able to do something. I think
but still the pandemic is affecting people. You see about the priority that I mentioned in the perception of.
I definitely believe that. I have recently read, because my students are writing policy paper, taking positions of NGO and then writing policy paper. Yesterday I read a paper about mask usage and then its detrimental effects on climate change and also CO2 emissions. And I think that's definitely something that we'll be examining for the next few years for environmental sort of effects as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my pleasure to also join your.
Thank you so much. Well, hopefully that we'll be able to invite you regularly in the future, if possible.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody who joined our session today. If you have any questions, I think definitely Irina will be very happy to contact. Irina, do you mind that if student wants to connect with you, I can give them your email, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yes, please. So, if somebody wants to join the Venus project as well, please also you can write to me, and I also can arrange that.
Okay. Yeah. See, this is the thing. You come to the lecture, you get some different opportunity.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you so much. I'll let you go because I think it's also late in Taiwan as well. You're supposed to go either to sleep, I think.
That's all right. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Bye now.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.